currently about 1:30 on Wednesday, March 29th, which means that it is Kayla from Booksandlala's birthday today. Kayla, if you're watching this, happy birthday. Kayla is hosting a 72-hour readathon where everyone reads Kayla's favorite books. And I feel like I've just been waiting for this moment, you know, because I feel like Kayla and I's reading tastes align in some places but don't align in others. So I'm hoping to use this vlog as a way to determine where our tastes overlap and where they don't. And you know, before we get into the books that I'm reading, I feel like I just have to give a really big shout out to Kayla because I feel like she is the booktube girly. Like, I just feel like there wouldn't really be booktube without Kayla. I feel like the ideas that she comes up with are just out of this world, and I feel like a lot of people get inspiration from her. And so if you're not already subscribed to her membership, I highly recommend it. If you like her regular content, then you'll definitely like her membership content, and that's where this readathon actually came about. So if you're a little curious, like, what 72-hour readathon are you talking about, that means you're not part of her membership and you're missing out, okay? And so for this vlog, I had a lot of books to choose from because Kayla provided a list of books that she's given 4.5 to 5 stars just to indicate her favorites. But for this vlog, I wanted to pick books that I already owned, whether that's on audio or physically. So it did skinny the list down a little bit for me, just because I felt like if Kayla had already read it and loved it, and I had already had it on my TBR, that means that I had already had some type of interest in it. So unlike Kayla, I am a mood reader. So I have a list of 5 books here that I want to read for this vlog. And while I know I'm not going to be able to read all 5 of them in 72 hours, I did want to give myself some options. And so I picked one book from every genre almost. So the first one is Honey and Spice, which is a romance. And I actually started this a couple of days ago before I decided to do this vlog, but it just turns out that Kayla gave this book 5 stars. So I'm about 40% of the way into that. And then for fantasy, I have A Lot's Away by Darcy Little Badger. For thrillers and mysteries, I have The Other Side of Night by Adam Hamdy. For sci-fi, I have Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. And for horror, I have This Thing Between Us by Gus Moreno. So obviously, because I've already started Honey and Spice, I'm going to finish that.
Exactly what I loved so much in here. Like, it was just everything. It was the characters, it was their dynamic, it was what they cared about outside of their dynamic. I loved learning about the podcast. I loved everybody who was supporting each other.
I also have a hair appointment today, so hopefully I'll be able to listen to the rest of this audiobook during my hair appointment. But I will give you guys a quick synopsis and my thoughts so far on Honey and Spice. So in Honey and Spice, we follow this character who is a podcaster at her college in England, and her podcast mainly focuses on teaching women essentially how to deal with fuckboys. But things start to get a little spicy when she starts to have a connection with like the resident fuckboy, and they realize that they need each other for these projects, and they end up sparking this like fake dating situation. I'm 40% in and I'm eating this up, okay? Because even though they've sparked a fake dating contract relationship, the banter is there, okay? The vibes are there already. Like, the chemistry is flowing, and it's like, y'all be for real. Y'all know y'all are feeling each other. I don't know, I just find myself like cheesing as I'm listening to the audiobook. I'll also say that the narrator's voice is everything. So if you watch Love Island, then you know that a lot of people on that show have like a really thick English accent, and there's just like a certain way that they say words that just really do something to my ear. Like, I just really like it. And this audiobook narrator has that accent, and I'm obsessed. So just like hearing the characters talk and like the inflections in the narrator's voice is just chef's kiss. It is so good. But as you can tell, I'm enjoying it so far. So I'm gonna put these headphones on. I'm gonna do some more work for my actual job. And I will come back once I have an update for you guys. definitely still hate my hair from this morning, but I've taken it down because that claw clip was giving me a little bit of a headache. But let's talk about Honey and Spice. I'm obsessed, okay? Like, it was everything I wanted it to be and more. The banter between the two characters and the banter with everybody was just so up my alley. Like, it felt witty and it felt quick, but it didn't feel forced at all. I liked both main characters. So our main character, Kiki, she is just so relatable, I think, to a lot of young women who are out there dating with this current dating scene. Like, me included, it was a little too relatable. And like, when it comes to relatability, I just feel like her sense of humor and my sense of humor are just very alike. Like, I caught myself laughing out loud. And then we have Malachi, which is her love interest. And Malachi, ooh, like, I love him so much. And I've never said that I have a book crush. Like, I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I have a crush on this book character. You know what I mean? I've just never been one of those people. But Malachi could get it if he was a real person, okay? I'm not gonna lie, I just thought someone broke into my apartment because I heard voices, and I forgot that I have Kayla from Booksandlala over on her live sprints right now, and she was on mute and then she unmuted herself, and I was like, who's in my apartment? But it's just Kayla. But back to Honey and Spice. So I love the two characters individually, but I also loved their relationship. We actually got to see them grow as people, and we got to see them like actually fall in love. I don't typically like insta love, but I also don't like relationships that are really drawn out. And then also, like, with the pacing, you know, with the third act conflict, that's just something that always tends to bother me in romances a lot of the time. But I feel like because we got to know the characters so well leading up to that, I actually didn't mind it because I could see where both characters were coming from and why they were having the issue. And so I honestly like didn't mind that part. And then the way that they just came back together, just swooning. I was listening to the end of the audiobook on my way home from work just now, and I was like almost tearing up. I was like, this is just so beautiful. So obviously this is a romance, but there were other topics in the book that I'm so happy that it touched on. So it touches on like friendships, specifically like female friendships, and like it kind of shines them in a positive light, which I really enjoyed. It also lightly touches on like colorism and like racism and stuff, and I was just like, we love to see that. This book was just like my perfect book, almost like my perfect romance. And let me talk about the audiobook, okay? So I'm sure you don't lose anything by reading it physically, but boy, do you gain something by listening to it on audio, okay? Like, I already mentioned that I really liked the narrator's voice and like how she was depicting the characters and like her inflections and stuff. But there was also these like audio effects in the book too. So like I mentioned, our main character is a podcaster. So it was like a special audio effect when she was on her podcast. There were special audio effects when she was just on the phone with someone. I will say though, the spicy scene in the book, I read at work. Obviously, I was listening to it and hearing certain things in the audiobook, I was like, oh wow. When I tell you my face, I was too stunned to speak. So overall, if you can't tell, I gave this book 5 out of 5. And so it's nice to know that so far, me and Kayla's tastes align. And you know, and part of the whole reason of me picking books that I already owned was so that I don't spend any more money on books. But Honey and Spice, add to cart. And so I'm setting you guys down now because Kayla is currently doing reading sprints over on her channel. So I think I'm going to pick up Station 11 and start reading that because that's what I'm most interested in next. And I'm going to eat a little bit of dinner, and I'll check back in with you guys when I have an update on Station 11. Why I say it like that. Station 11. I got about 25 pages into Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel while on Kayla's reading sprints. And so I'll just read a little bit of the back to kind of describe to you guys what it's about. And so this just says, Kirsten will never forget the night Arthur, the famous Hollywood actor, had a heart attack on stage during a production of King Lear. That was also the night when a devastating flu pandemic arrived in the city, and within weeks, civilization as we know it came to an end. 20 years later, Kirsten moves between the settlements with a small troupe of actors and musicians. I really didn't know what this book was about when I started reading it, so it was funny because like the first chapter was like, boom, someone falls dead, and then within the next 2 chapters I find out about like a flu pandemic, and I was like, ooh, you know, we're just on the edges of a pandemic, you know. So I was like, ooh, well, this hit too close to home. But the funny thing is that this was published in 2015. You guys can't see that. So I'm interested to see where this book goes, but I'm already really interested in like the writing style. It's moving very fast for me to only be 25 pages in. So one other thing Kayla and I have in common is that we both like the show The Challenge, which is kind of like a physical competition show that also combines like strategic moves and stuff. There's a new episode on tonight, so I'm gonna take a small break from Station 11 and I'm gonna watch that. Then we'll get back to it. Okay, so it is about 7 o'clock p.m. and I just got done doing reading sprints on Kayla's channel. So I am about halfway through Station 11. But before I get into that, I always feel like if you guys can't see my hands, I have to tell you what I'm doing. So I'm currently making some pasta salad, and I wanted to try this like new brand I saw at Kroger that is made from chickpeas. It turned out more like spaghetti pasta, and it was like kind of soft. I'm not gonna show you guys because like nobody wants to see that. And luckily I still got like my regular brand, like the Kroger brand of pasta for the pasta salad, just in case that didn't work out. Now I'm just cutting some cucumbers and some tomatoes and a red onion, and then I'll make like a sauce to go on it, and then I'll probably make like some sausage to go in it for some protein. Anyways, Station 11. I think I'm struggling with it a little bit because, you know, there are a lot of characters in this like acting troupe slash musical group. We're following them as they're going to different like settlements and different areas, and we're meeting new characters and like different settings and stuff. And I feel like that should be enough for me to be really intrigued. And while I'm not completely uninterested, I'm not as engaged as I think I should be. But I will say that I think one of the things that's keeping me engaged is like the writing style and the pacing of it. So it's like anytime I feel like I'm getting bored, then the author writes like a twist or something that keeps me hooked and wanting to keep reading. Another general note about this readathon, so on those reading sprints, Kayla, as she was ending, was like, oh, I hope everybody, you know, had a good Lalathon, and she was hoping that she finishes her book by midnight. And that's when I realized that this was actually supposed to end at midnight today. However, I started this late and I do want to see the full 72 hours through. So I'm definitely still going to continue on through tomorrow at 1 p.m. But yeah, I have about 150 pages left of Station 11. So I'm going to finish eating my dinner, showing you that. Let's not do that. Ooh, this is why I can't cook and talk. Good morning. Well, good morning-ish, since it's 11:30 a.m. But I think Station 11 heard me last night when I was low-key talking shit about how the book wasn't keeping my attention the way it should be, because right after that, the book really picked up for me. And so this story follows multiple characters in multiple different timelines in relation to how this pandemic started. One character we follow is the man who had a heart attack on stage during a performance of King Lear. And then we also follow a little girl that was also in the play. We follow the dead man's best friend, and we follow the man who tried to give him CPR on the stage. And so as we follow these characters, we kind of get to see how the world has changed, like as they know it. And that world is very close to what we live today, obviously, with like electricity, cars, just your everyday life, right? But the way this flu works is that you essentially die 2 days after you come in contact with it. So the incubation period is very short. And so a lot of the population ends up dying off because of this flu. And because the population is so low, that means that there's no one to keep up with like poles and wires and like car upkeep and all that kind of stuff. So there ends up not being any electricity, no internet. So we're learning about all of this through like these characters, like survival stories, and we follow them essentially from like day one, which is like the first day that people started dying from the flu, all the way up until like 20 years after day one. And so from there, we also learn how all of these characters are connected present day. And I'm gonna give this book a solid 4 stars, okay? It really did something special towards the end. The way the story was told and the writing style and the pacing really just, this isn't me, I don't know what this is. This is me trying to snap my fingers because I have something in my hand. But I'm not giving it a full 5 stars just because, like I said, it was a little slow for me in the beginning. And because I feel like there were a few loose ends with some of the characters that I would have liked to see be wrapped up. Or just like things with certain characters that I would have liked to see more of. But overall, a solid book, and I can understand why Kayla likes it. It actually kind of reminded me of Parable of the Sower, which is a book that I just read for my Reading Books from 1993 vlog. They're very similar in premise, and they're also very similar in the fact that they terrified me because they're just like a little too real, and like they definitely overlapped in some ways when thinking about like a post-pandemic world. And I also say that I'm glad that I read it now, or like not when the book first came out, because I could only imagine reading this book in 2015 when it came out, or 2016 or 2017, and then living through our pandemic after having read that book. Like my paranoia just would not have been great. Let's just say that. So if you read that book before the actual global pandemic, I'm so sorry. But like I said, it is about 11:30 a.m. right now, which means that there is about an hour and a half of my Readathon left. But I am gonna bend the rules a little bit more for myself because I did start The Other Side of Night by Adam Hamdy last night, and I definitely have about like 4 hours left of the audiobook. But I don't want to end this vlog without like finishing it, so we're just going to continue the vlog on until I finish this book, which shouldn't be too far past the 72 hours. And I decided to pick up The Other Side of Night because I felt like it wouldn't be Readathon if I didn't pick up like a mystery thriller that she recommends, so I had to go with this one. We are gonna eat breakfast, and we're actually gonna go on a little adventure, which I'll tell you about right now. All right, so we are at our destination. We are at the craft store, and now that I say it out loud, I feel like that's such an anticlimactic adventure that I'm taking you guys on, but it feels like an adventure to me because this year I decided that I was just gonna do more like small things that just like make me happy, explore hobbies, things like that, you know, just kind of like live life. And I actually signed up for an 8-week painting class that starts on Monday. So I have a long list of supplies that I need for that class. So I'm going to go in the craft store and get all of those, and then I'll be listening to The Other Side of Night as I'm shopping, because it is a really long list and I don't know where any of that stuff is in the craft store. Also, I just want to say that the weather outside today is immaculate. In Texas, I feel like there's rarely days where the sun is out and it doesn't feel like actual hell outside. And today is one of those days where it's like the sun is out, the weather is nice, and it's not too hot, and I just love that for us.
Something that I was not expecting, that I had just a great time uncovering, but I think that it might be a little too much for some people.
So one of these days, I'm gonna finish a readathon on time, but it's not gonna be in this vlog. Listen, time just gets away from me sometimes. You know, I think time is kind of fake, which is a personal flaw of mine, and I can recognize that. But yeah, I also just had things to do. Anyway, you guys don't want to hear about my excuses. Let's just talk about The Other Side of Night by Adam Hamdy. So I'm about 80 or 90 pages out from the end, and I'd say that I'm really enjoying this so far. So this book follows a couple of different characters, right? But the main storyline focuses around this detective named Harriet, and she ends up falling in love with this man. Two of the man's friends end up dying / disappearing, and they leave behind their son. There's just like some speculation there around their deaths, and so Harriet is taking it upon herself to investigate further, even though she's not on the police force anymore. And so we're getting a couple of timelines. We're getting Harriet present day, and we're also getting some time in the future, and we get perspective of the child as well. And so yeah, I feel like it's such a short book, but how the author is dropping like little tidbits that are foreshadowing a few things for us and that are kind of pointing us in certain directions is really, really interesting, and I think it's really well done. I will say though, it's not anything that's super mind-blowing yet, but I feel like it has the possibility to be, just depending on how it ends. So say if this ending doesn't hit the way that I want it to, right now I would give it between like a 3.5 stars, just because I'm enjoying the pacing, and I'm enjoying like how the story is coming together. But I think if the ending hits the way that I want it to hit, I could see myself giving it like between a 4 and a 4.5. I'm not sure if this is going to be a 5-star read, but you know, you never know. But there's supposed to be a storm coming in today, so I feel like that's perfect reading weather. So I am going to sit on the couch and get this finished so that I don't prolong this vlog any longer than it needs to be. So I'm not gonna lie, The Other Side of Night really threw me for a loop at the end. There was no way for me to see the ending coming, but I absolutely loved it. It's one of those endings where I can't really say too much about it, because I think it's just best you go into it without knowing too much. The only thing I will say is that I feel like because of the nature of the ending, I was a little confused, but not necessarily in a bad way. It was just like, I think if I would have really sat down and thought through every single detail, then I probably would have been like, this doesn't add up. But that's not me. I'm not gonna do that. And so the ending just really did what needed to be done. And so I'm gonna give this book a 4.5 stars. I really, really liked it. And it wasn't a full 5-star just because the ending really just came out of left field. Like I just wasn't expecting it. But it also makes me want to kind of reread this. And you know, that's a really special quality in a book. So overall, I had a good time, and I would highly recommend it for it being so short but so effective. You know, I was nervous going into this video because I was like, what if these are all duds? And I hate every single one of them, but me and Kayla's tastes still align. And so just to remind you guys, I had a 5-star and probably one of my favorite books of the year. And then we have a 4-star, which is a solid read. You know, this didn't like necessarily blow me out of the water, but it was definitely impactful and it was definitely effective, and I can see why a lot of people like this. It was just a little slow going for me in certain areas, but overall I did enjoy how it ended. And then, as you guys heard, 4.5 stars. So the average is pretty good.